Week, we saw Peter's denials of Christ. We looked at how Peter and Judas both dealt with their sin, one in a very constructive manner and one in a very destructive manner, and how that relates to us and how we deal with it. Okay, so now we're moving on to more of Jesus's trial. So we will pick up where we left off last week, again in John chapter 18, and we will be picking up verse 28 and reading through 32.
Then they led Jesus from Caiaphas to the praetorium, and it was early morning. But they themselves did not go into the praetorium, lest they should be defiled, but that they might eat the Passover. Pilate then went out to them and said, "What accusation do you bring against this man?" They answered and said to him, "If he were not an evildoer, we would not have delivered him up to you." Then Pilate said to them, "You take him and judge him according to your law." Therefore the Jews said to him, "It is not lawful for us to put anyone to death," that the saying of Jesus might be fulfilled, which he spoke, signifying by what death he would die.
So let's take a look at these religious leaders here at this point. We looked at the first part of the trial. We see how there was aspects of that were very illegal. One, they were requiring Jesus to defend himself, and that was not how it was. They were required to accuse him, okay, and they were failing to do that. The other is they were striking him, and that was also unlawful, okay. So we already see that these religious leaders are participating in unlawful acts, okay. And then here we open in verse 28 that when they went into the praetorium, which was a Gentile region within the city, which was deemed unclean to the Jews, okay, these religious leaders are so pious that they would not enter because that would make them unclean. But doing unlawful acts in their own court, that was okay. That would not defile them according to themselves. But you see how they are putting on airs. They are making themselves out to be better than what they really are. They're whitewashing the tomb, just like Jesus said. Okay, they have death in their heart. And we see that with this interaction with Pilate. Pilate, he's the Roman authority, give it a lower authority, but he was a Roman authority over the Jews in this region. So when they bring this man to them, it would make sense that he's asking, what are you accusing this man of? I mean, what law authority would just hand anybody who was brought to him, they would just execute him, right? That would make no sense. So what Pilate is doing here, it makes perfect sense. Like, okay, explain to me what's going on here. And you can look at their response. Well, if you were not a criminal, we wouldn't have brought him to you. And you just see the snideness in the remark here. Okay, Pilate's not stupid. He didn't get to this place where he was just by some connection or whatnot. He got to where he was because of his personal qualities. Okay, I think he's picking up from the very second it started of what's going on here. And quite frankly, he wants nothing to do with it. It's like, it's just your petty squabbles. Leave me out of it. Okay.
Well, he's also saying, you know, you're complaining this guy's claiming to be God. What's that got to do with me?
Yeah, he's saying you're claiming this guy is claiming to be God, and what's that have to do with me? Exactly. So his response to say, well, judging by your own laws, because that's a religious thing. That makes perfect sense. It's a religious squabble. You judge them by your religious rules. Just leave me out of this, you know. And something to note that is because they wouldn't come in, Pilate went out to them. He accommodated them in the very beginning to hear out what they had to say. And what's he getting from them? You know, snide remarks and just, you know, they're trying to be better than what they are. We see that clear through. So these religious leaders are careful to keep the rules of ritual and ceremonial cleanliness. At the same time, they demanded an unfair trial that mocked justice. All right. So Pilate was intelligent, and he saw what the Jews were up to. Let's look at Matthew's account. Matthew 27, verse 26.
Then he released Barabbas to them, and when he had scourged Jesus, he delivered him to be crucified. I don't think that's it.
I think that was it. Okay. Yeah, I missed that one. I got 27. What's that? Yeah. Anyways, it's from 11 through 26 is Matthew's account of what all went on here. And Matthew makes it evident that he knows that these guys are headhunting. They don't have any real basis. They just found somebody that they don't agree with and they want them out of their way. Okay. And poor Pilate, he's just caught up in the middle of this. I mean, what can he do? He tries this, he tries that. You know, he feels like he can't just flat out deny them without causing a possible rebellion, at minimum an uproar. And if Rome hears about it, then they're looking down on him. Okay, so he's got to try to keep things quiet and deal with this in the most peaceful manner that he can. Okay.
Well, they start threatening his job.
They start threatening his job. Yeah.
Yeah, when they start saying, well, if you don't do this, then you're no friend of Caesar. And because Caesar was claiming to be God at this time, and you know, they were, you know, hail Caesar. That was, you know, the salute to what he claimed to be God on earth. And they were saying, well, he's claiming to be God, so if he's actually doing this, he's purporting an uprising against Rome.
That's the point that they were trying to push, that he's doing an uprising against Rome. That's what they're threatening with. And just their wording in that is saying, you know, if you don't do what we want, then, you know, there's something bad in you, or it's proof that you are against your leaders by your actions. You know, they're trying to ensnare him into doing this. Okay.
Did you mention Pilate's wife?
No, we have not talked about Pilate's wife. You know, we see that she had a dream, a vision.
It's right there at 27.
And chapter 27, verse 26. Yeah. Yeah. You want to read that? We can look at that.
I'll tell you, in Mark's account, the first thing Pilate asked Jesus is, "Are you the king of the Jews?" So Pilate's not probably in the total dark about who Jesus is. You know, these guys knew exactly what's going on in all that countryside.
Yeah, and like Preston brought up in Mark's account, we get to see from the very beginning that Pilate is rooting down to the basis of this. He knows what's going on here, right? He's not just a puppet. He's not being played by the Jews. He's, you know, not just a figurehead. He's got an idea what's going on. And then, of course, we see in Matthew's account with his wife, we got some godly input into the situation as well. Okay. But these people have condemned Jesus to death. That's why they brought him here, not to be judged. They brought him here just to be executed. They're saying, all we want from you is to do what we can't. We're not allowed to do, and that's kill him. That's all we're asking. Just shut up and do it. You know, don't think, just do what we want. You're just our tool, our pawn, is what they're going after. Okay. And Pilate really doesn't want anything to do with this. Okay, let's look at verses 33 through 40 of John, chapter 18.
Then Pilate entered the praetorium again, called Jesus, and said to him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered him, "Are you speaking for yourself about this, or did others tell you this concerning me?" Pilate answered him, "Am I a Jew? Your own nation and the chief priests have delivered you to me. What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would fight, so that I should not be delivered to the Jews. But now my kingdom is not from here." That wasn't working.
Wasn't? So we have more to go? Okay.
Thank you. Pilate therefore said to him, "Are you a king then?" Jesus answered, "You say rightly that I am a king. For this cause I was born, and for this cause I have come into the world, that I should bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth hears my voice." Pilate said to him, "What is truth?" And when he had said this, he went out again to the Jews and said to them, "I find no fault in him at all. But you have a custom that I should release someone to you at the Passover. Do you therefore want me to release to you the king of the Jews?" Then they all cried again, saying, "Not this man, but Barabbas." Now Barabbas was a robber.
Okay, so this section in John is John's account of Pilate's interrogation of Jesus one-on-one. Look how it starts out. He asked Jesus, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Now, look at what Jesus does here. He's trying to clarify, what do you mean by king? King of the Jews. What do you mean by this statement? Because what would, well, recall throughout John how Jesus is always battling with getting people's minds out of the here and now and into the spiritual realm. Okay. John's been very good at portraying that struggle throughout Jesus' ministry. I believe here we're seeing that again. Jesus is trying to get people to think past the here and now and what we are and into the spiritual realm. Dan?
Something to remember is that it wasn't illegal to be king under the Romans. Many of the countries that the Romans had under subservience, under slavery, actually had kings. And we see that throughout history is that there were kings. And so that wasn't the issue. You know, and just like Pilate doesn't make a big deal of the fact that Jesus says he's king.
Yeah, exactly. Wasn't illegal to have kings underneath the Roman emperor, the Roman rule. And so for Pilate, it wasn't a big deal for Jesus to say that he was king. Yeah, as long as he wasn't doing this, as long as he was being subservient to the Roman Empire, they can have one man that is accountable for the entire nation. Actually kind of simplifies things, doesn't it? All right. He's the one that gets punished by Rome for what the people do because he's in charge of them. That would simplify things. Okay. So basically what this interaction here is going on is they're clarifying, right? What Pilate is asking, are you the rightful born king of the Jews? And, if this is the case, then let's discuss this situation. Okay. But what Jesus is saying is, what's your motive here? Are you seeking me out spiritually? Or are you just thinking political here? All right. And of course, Pilate's like, am I a Jew? I'm not Jewish. Why would I speak you out spiritually? I mean, I'm talking political here. Okay. So then Jesus has to say, yes, I am the King of the Jews, but not politically, spiritually. My kingdom is not of this world. Okay.
Well, in point of fact, Jesus doesn't actually say, I am the king.
He says,
You say, I am the king.
yeah. Basically saying, it is as you say, but let me clarify. Yeah. Yeah. And that's been Jesus' whole thing the whole time. He's not coming out and saying, I am the Messiah. No, he's coming out with the proofs. You make your own decision. And that's the same thing that with Pilate. He doesn't change. He is the same all the way through. Look at the evidence, Pilate. Who am I? Okay. And then, so his point is the kingdom of God does not need defending by soldiers. In answer to Pilate, Jesus told him he had come into the world to testify to the truth. Pilate, though spiritually blind, desired to release Jesus, whose wisdom was beyond him. But the plan for Jesus' release failed. I also want to go back and look at verse 38. Pilate's response here. He says, well, what is truth? And having said this, he left. It wasn't a question to be answered. You ever run that? Somebody just throw out a question and then leave? Obviously, weren't looking for you to answer them. Jesus could have very easily answered him and explained to him what truth is. Okay. But he wasn't really one. It was that kind of philosophical. Oh, that's philosophical.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Was Jesus moved it from the here and now physical
big deal. And also it's in a sense above him, right? Jesus took it to another level. Okay, let's take this discussion into a deeper level. And some people are just like, whoa, I can't handle it. I'm still shallow. And then they just leave. That's what happened here. Okay, I'm not going to get into this religious, philosophical discussion here because I have no training. I don't know. Okay, I'm just going to leave. We're going to keep it down here in my area of expertise. That's political, and that's what we're going to do. So let's find a political solution to this, right? Okay, and his solution, no.
Well, for today, we find that even among the church, they're saying truth is transcendent. You know, we can change the truth to fit our own needs. And Jesus says, I am the truth.
Yes, even today in this church, we try to change the truth.
And Pilate's response is the world's response.
Yeah, Pilate's response is the world's response. Exactly. That's very good to note that there is only one truth. You know, my view of truth may not necessarily be your view of truth, and that's okay. No, it's not. There is only one truth. Somebody is going to be wrong. It's not God, right? So, do we listen? Do we study? Do we strive to find God's truth, or do we fall into the world's trap and truth is relevant? Okay.
Well, you know, the rest of that verse, where he says what's truth, when he goes out, he says, I find no basis for a charge against him. You know, they're basically saying, I see no truth in what you are saying.
Yes. I see no truth in what you're saying. And that's what he says. I see no basis for a charge, any charge, okay, much less death, the ultimate penalty, right? He just came out and said Jesus is innocent to these people, okay? So, but to try to keep, you know, to work politics, he's a politician here, so he's got, okay, I got this idea. I know how to solve this problem politically. You have this custom that I release to you a prisoner. Obviously, this is going to be the best choice. Everyone else I've already convicted of some wrong. They are obviously guilty. Here's one I've already, and I'm stating it. This man is, I find no charge against him. So for him, it's like, it's a no-brainer. You know, they will ask for his release because really what harm can he do compared to everyone else? Okay. But that didn't work out like he had planned, did it? He kept stepping it up.
You know, well, let's go talk to him. Okay, well, I discovered there's nothing wrong. He goes out and says, okay, here's another option. You know, take Barabbas. You know, we'll release the person that you say. We'll give you this option. Well,
Yeah.
he was hoping at least that Barabbas was such a bad guy that they would pick Jesus over Barabbas. And that didn't happen.
What was that? Try to pacify the crowd, and he's doing with an option that to him is a no-brainer. And John here just said that he was a thief. Okay, but in Luke it says a thief and a murderer. Okay, so
And history says that he is also an insurrectionist.
And an insurrectionist, and that's more likely why Rome was involved in that. Okay. So if you want to look that up, that's Luke 23, verse 19, where it gives a little more detail on this. So he was probably one of the many Jews who rebelled against the Romans in control of Israel at that time, and he did it in a very violent way. Here's a very violent man, well-known violent man. Okay, so Pilate is, like you said, stepping it up. Okay, let's do a really bad guy, and Jesus. Which one do you want? You know, and I'm sure their response just shocked him. It's like, what? How? That makes absolutely no sense. He could have just released him, right? Case dismissed. But that would have caused some problems because of what the Jewish leaders already said. And that would have got moved up the chain of power, and that would have threatened his position. So he's walking the political plank here, and he's trying to make them choose the right thing. Force them to in this way, right? Okay. Preston?
And in the middle of this is traditions and customs that even us have to question our traditions and customs. Do they match God's traditions and customs?
Yep.
And I would use an example in America. At Easter time, we celebrate the resurrection of Jesus Christ by rolling eggs in a lawn.
Yes, we celebrate the resurrection by rolling eggs on the lawn. Yeah. But the one thing to note here is that Pilate knows the Jewish traditions and customs. Okay? He's like, guys, I know you. I know how you live. I'm sympathetic to you guys, right? So work with me here, right? You see, Pilate has made every effort he can to get Jesus' release while walking the political plank.
Their tradition was, though, for mercy to release someone, not to exchange someone for it.
Yeah.
As political as he wanted to be, he had his wife kind of send a spiritual dagger into him also, which made it even like a triple twist.
Yeah. But from the spiritual aspect, what's Pilate doing here? What was that?
Trying to avoid being dirtied up and dodged.
Trying to avoid from being dirty up. He's trying to dodge the spiritual. He's not taking a stand, is he?
Doesn't that make that decision?
Yeah, he's not making that decision. God gave him every opportunity to stand up for him, to profess for God. And he was taking the political, he was wavering. He was not, what was that? Preservation route. Robert? Exactly. That's exactly the point. And what Robert said is you could be down on the Jews for the choice, but we're doing the same thing today. We try to walk the political fence. And in doing so, we don't take a stand for God, just like what Pilate did.
When you say we, what are you referring to?
Christendom. There are many Christians that are afraid to stir the political pot. They don't want to go against what everyone is deemed correct, loving, right? We see that a lot nowadays. Don't be judgmental. Yeah, exactly. So to be political in that face, then we don't stand up for what God says is wrong.
So are we considering people that
That's a real good question. When people do that, do we consider them Christians or just mouthpieces, just like the Jews?
In some cases, they could be a lot like Peter too, where they got the downloading that they would get. In our past, we've had a lot of leaders, a lot of presidents that were big on Christianity and very outspoken. And then as times change in our country and as times change in the world, you see a lot of them, they hush about it a lot more. And they're not open, and that creates the same thing in the people that they lead. And so that's why we see Christianity being backseated in everything we do.
Yeah, because they're fear. They're afraid. They let the fear control them.
And the votes went the other direction,
Yep.
so they follow that direction.
They're free. They're afraid of losing their position, their livelihood,
Lose their charitable tax advantage.
the charitable tax advantage. Yeah, you know, what are we going to do when giving our tithes to the church is no longer tax write-off? Well, exactly. But I bet you when that day comes, we are going to see tithes drop, because there are going to be people there that are political, that aren't going to take the stand for God no matter what. You know, that is continually, I mean, that was the problem back then. It's a problem today. What's going on? Stand up for God's truth no matter what.
Like the tithe, like Joshua said, decide this day who you shall serve.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got to decide now whether we're going to continue to support our pastors and our churches when the government decides
Yep.
to go on.
You got to decide it now. So Pilate, he spoke to Jesus face to face. Okay. And I have no doubt that he saw the wisdom and knowledge and power behind this man. I don't think you could speak to Jesus face to face and not experience that. I really think that's why the Jewish leaders kept him bound the whole time. It was because of the fear of what they saw in him. Okay. So he had that. He spoke to Jesus face to face. Jesus, in his ultimate wisdom, no doubt just astonished him. Okay. Then we got his wife saying, I had this dream, I had this vision from God, right? He's getting this from all directions.
His own centurion probably reported to him the healing of his servant.
Yeah. Yeah. His own centurion probably reported what happened in the garden, right? What has been happening this whole time, you know, because there were soldiers that went into the high priest's house who witnessed this trial, right? He would have gotten those reports as well. He knows what's going on. He's directly confronted with God at this point. Okay. And his actions are sidestepping it. He's frustrated, but he doesn't have the courage to just stand up and say, no, you're wrong. This man's innocent. It's over.
Well, the thing is, though, is if he'd have said no, he'd have had a Jewish uprising called for by the Sanhedrin, by the priests, the powers that be.
Yep.
It would have been political suicide for him to do that.
Exactly. It would have been political suicide for him to do that, but he should have, right? That's the point. When we get to a place in our life where it looks like if we speak up for God, that's it for us.
Well, don't we also see that, over and over again, and I think it's a fulfillment of prophecy, was the one person dying for the many.
Mm-hmm.
And we see that throughout history. Well, are you willing to die to save millions? Are you willing to die to save thousands? Are you willing to die to save 100? For one person to die for the greater good. We see it. It's a thing throughout history. It's where we
Yeah. Also, when we're talking political, do you think you could get very far in our modern political world if you said homosexuality is wrong, there should be no rights or privileges for anybody claiming to be homosexual, as well as abortions? If you're saying my political stance is I'm going to make homosexuality wrong again, I'm going to eliminate abortions, all these godly stance, I'm going to try to eliminate people living together, any benefits for non-spouses, if somebody goes to the political platform like that, how far do you think they're going to get? As far as Kanye West got. Yeah.
Well, the media would crucify them.
The media would crucify him. They would do just like the Jews are doing. They would cry and cry. Crucify him, get him out of here. He is evil. He is wrong. And you're going to look at the Bible saying, well, no, actually, he's exactly right. Yeah, and they're going to say, well, that's not the truth. What is truth?
Well, it's not unlike what the Supreme Court justices have done in ignoring the Constitution.
Yeah, it's not unlike, and that's what we're saying is
They're ignoring the truth.
our leaders are doing like Pilate is doing, even though they may know what's the right thing, they are stepping around it. They're working politics to try to get people to do the right thing, but ultimately they let them do what they feel they want to do anyways.
So we have the verse where I believe it's Paul says, where them that knoweth to do good and them that not, to them it's sin. So Pilate knew what the right thing to do was.
Yes, Pilate knew what the right thing to do was, and even though he tried, he did not stand up and take a stand for that.
But then he steps it up again and tries.
Yeah, and when we're going to look at that next week, his continued attempt to do the right thing. Robert, did you have your hand up? Yeah. Very good point, Robert. And I'll see if I can relay that the way what you were saying. We have to be careful as Christians that when we get in that spot, that we don't say, well, today is not the day to die. I'll wait. This is not the battle when God has put you there, right? He tells us to stand firm. Don't waver. If Pilate, from the very minute that he found Jesus innocent, just was done with it, he would have done the right thing, wouldn't he? And it would have been done. There would have been consequences for his actions in the political realm, yes. Are there going to be consequences for our actions in our modern political world? Yes. But don't be so afraid of those consequences that we waver when the moment happens. Okay? Every moment that comes is the battle to be faced. It's to be fought here and now. Stand firm now, and it'll be easier to continue to stand firm. You bend now, and every time you take a step back and retreat, it's harder to come back into the attack formation. It's a lot easier to take another step back and a continued retreat. Pretty soon you're routed.
Well, even today in America, we have a religious leader like John Piper who says, I won't support either. He's doing the Pilate thing.
So Preston's saying is even today we have religious leaders like John Piper that is saying, I won't support either. So he's doing exactly what Pilate was doing. He's trying to play the political field.
Retreat,
Yep. If you're staying on the fence, eventually you're going to get knocked off.
And because Barabbas is probably popular, we'll choose the popular one over the truth.
Yeah. You say Barabbas was probably popular, but I think it comes down to that their fear of Jesus was so much greater than their fear of a murderer that they were willing to take their murderer over Jesus.
In their mind, they probably just figured, oh, he'll be locked back up here soon anyway.
Maybe. He's going. He'll just kill a couple more before they catch him again.
They're gonna kill us if we let them out.
Yeah, they don't fully understand how evil works.
Well, and Jesus
But
so obviously was in the face of the religious leaders and all that they stood for
mhm.
because of his authority. And it threatened their very, way of life.
It threatened their position, their authority, their way of life. Jesus was the biggest threat to the religious leaders over anybody. Yes, they feared Jesus more than anybody else. That drove to their decision, their actions.
They feared that they would lose their political positions.
Their political, yes. Yep, exactly. Fear. There's a lot of fear going on. And at the whole thing, at the same time, these guys are, I got to stay out here because I'm clean. I'm clean. And yet their hearts are just so full of fear and hatred. Okay. All right. Well, we will continue. Start in chapter 19 next week because we are out of time today. What's that? Yeah, great discussions. I mean, such a good portion of scripture. And I know we can go on. I mean, you guys' input is wonderful. I really appreciate that. And that's what makes this thing so much better. Okay, so let's go ahead and close in prayer today. Would somebody like to pray for us?
Dear Lord, thank you for this day, for this time that we've had together to talk about your word and to learn, to hear from each other and to hopefully hear from you. And I pray, Lord, that you would be with us as we go into our service and that your hand would be upon the pastors and that your word would be open to us and that he would be speaking the truth of your word as always. In your name we thank you, Lord. Amen.